Hello everyone, and welcome back to the second session of the sixth week of Angular development course. In this session, we will try to understand on how can we do component to component communication using services. So as we saw in the previous week, we can do component communication using services. So wherein a parent component and its children can either share a same service whose interface enables bidirectional communication within the same module, or there may also be cases where you want sibling components or components located in different modules to pass data to one another using services, right? So if you remember, we did this scenario wherein we created a couple of variables and a couple of methods, and using a multiple components, we were able to pass the data and update that data simultaneously. So now let's just see that again in action for this new application that we have created. So coming back to the application, what we'll do now is we'll just kill the terminal or the server that's running over here. So just give Control C, and that will kill the server. And after that, just clear the terminal. Come back to the browser, and you can just close the application for now. And once you have done that, what you do is now you'll create a service. Okay, and before creating a service, we also create one more child component. So the syntax for that is okay. So what I've done now is inside my parent component, which is app component, I'm just creating one more child component. So similarly, I'll just create one more child component just to ensure that we are getting it really clear. So I'm just creating one more child component over here. So all these components are getting created inside my app module. Okay. So yes, we have created all the child components. Now what we will do is we'll go to the parent component, which is my app component, and over here I'll just create kind of just call the newly created child components over here. So what I've done now is I have just called my child 2 and child 3 over here. So if you observe right here, this child 1, 2 and 3, all the three are sibling to each other, right? They don't have parent-child combination, but they are other sibling to each other. But all these three are part of the app component. So for app component, these are children, and for all these three components, app component is the parent. Okay. So whatever we did for child 1 will also work for child 2 and child 3 if we want to pass the data from parent to the child or from child to parent. Now, in this session, we'll try to understand how can we pass data between these three components. Okay. So the one way of to do that is, if you understand, we can use the same combination of input and output decorators, right? So what you can do is you can have this child 2 to also have an input, and and you can also let an output even pass. Then in your parent, you can, based on the output, you can update the input, so on and so forth. So let's see that in action. So I'll just copy paste the same code to child 2 as well, and even in my child 2 component, I'll just go and whatever we did for the parent component, like child 1 component, the same code I'm going to just copy paste it over here. And whenever you see this red line, just you need to it means that you have not imported those decorators, so you just need to import all of them. So the same for event emitter. So yes, now all of this are imported, and here I'll just update, like, emit the value as hello from child 2. Here I'll hello from child 1, and similarly for child 3 I'll do the same thing. Basically I've imported all the things, and here I'll just say hello from child 3. And on my parent component, what I'll do is whenever there is an event which is updated from any of my child, so instead of putting an alert right now, what we will do is I'll just kind of disable it, and but rather what I'll do is I'll just update this dot name over here. Okay, so this dot name equals to event. So now if you see here, it is now throwing me error that this event cannot assign this value the event to this name, right? So to fix this, what we can do is either we can say that this can be of this type string or event. So that is one way of to do it, or the other way to do it is we can just give it the type of any. So if you give it the type of any, this error will go away. Okay, so we have done that. So just to reiterate what we have done, So earlier in the previous session, what we did is we were just having communication from app component 1 to app component, child component 1, right? But now what we have done is the same feature we have extended to child component 2 and 3 as well. And on the parent component, what we are doing is whenever any of the child component is giving me an update, I will directly just take whatever value is coming in, assign it to the name variable over here. And remember, whenever I update this name now, what happens is all my child will get the latest name now. Okay, so let's see that in action. So to start the server again in my local, I just need to give ng serve -o. So one thing which we have not done is we are currently for the child 2 and child 3, we have not updated the HTML to show the latest name. So we'll just do that. I'll just say child 2, here I'll say child 1, and same I'll do for child 3 as well. Okay, so now I come to my code. So here you see that now I have 3 childs, and whenever I say pass a new name to the child, you say that both my child 1 and child 2 is updated. Let's see why child 3 is not updated. To child 3 we have not bound this component, so that's why it's not coming. Okay. Yeah. So now if you see, if I give pass name to a child, you will see that in parallel all the childs are getting updated, and similarly if I pass any event back to parent, you will now see that all my siblings got updated. So if I just do it again, you see that though I'm just triggering the value from child 1, even child 2 and child 3 are getting triggered. So I hope you understood how this is happening. If not, we'll just try to understand it in a pictorial way. So coming back to the whiteboard, so now we are basically talking about sibling communication. Okay, so we saw yesterday that we can do sibling communication using services, but since we have learnt about input and output operators, decorators, so I thought I will also show you guys how we can do it using input and output as well. So what we are currently doing now right now is we have this app component. Okay, so this is your app component. Okay, and inside this app component we have 3 siblings. One is your child 1, other is child 2, and the third is child 3. Okay, so in parent component, if you remember, I said that there is something called as we catch the output event over here from children, and we in the parent component what we are doing is in the child one, say assume now I want to pass the data from child 1, and that data I want to get it updated in child 2 and 3. So how can I do that is from child 1 I can emit an output event emitter. That event emitter will go and hit my parent component. In my parent component I can have a common variable called name. So whenever this output event is received, whatever is the value of that name, whatever is the value of that event, I will update it to the name over here. And once this name is updated, since this name is an input to all the 3 component, right? So automatically all the 3 childs are getting rendered. So that is why if you see if you come to my child and I'll just refresh it. So initially everything is null, but if I just click on this past event to parent, so basically what here I'm doing is if you see my child 1 component, so whenever I am clicking on pass event to parent, right, this send event. So basically what I'm doing is I'm emitting an output event where I'm just sending hello from child 1 and I'm passing a random math value, right? A random number. So in this case, what happens is first this output event hits my parent, which is my app component.ts. In my app component.ts, if you see, I have this catch update function over here, which will first listen to the event that is being emitted, and whenever that event is received, it will then it is what we are doing is we are just updating the current value of name to whatever event that is received, right? And once this is done, as I said, Angular automatically runs a change detection cycle. So whenever there is a change to this name property over here, it will automatically re-render the other components which does not have the updated name. So that is the reason why you see child 2 and child 3 also are getting updated whenever child 1 is passing an output. So that is why when I click on this past event to parent, so though I'm just sending data to my parent, automatically my child 2 and child 3 are also getting updated. And similarly, if I just click it again, or like any number of time, you'll see that the numbers are updating. So this is one way how you can pass data from one sibling to other siblings using input and output decorators. But this, as you may see, is not a really an optimized solution, because you have to write a bunch of code, duplicate the code and do all that thing. So in order to bypass that or overcome that, we can use the concept of services. So now let's see how we can do the same thing using services. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll kill my terminal, Control C, clear the terminal using clear keyword, enter. Now I will create a service. So for service, how to create is ng. You can type G for generate. You can type the entire word generate, or you can give G, that is fine. After that, now we are going to create service. So you have to just give S or service, whichever word is fine for you. And after that, we have to give a name for it. So I'll just say test service. Okay. Or maybe I'll give it a name of state service. Okay. And I just need to press enter. So now what it will do is it will create a service for me inside this app module as part of this app module. And yeah, that is now created. Okay. And as we discussed yesterday, whenever you create any service, by default, it will be provided in root, meaning an instance of that would be created in app module, and that will be available throughout your application, right? So what I'll do in my state services, the same concept, I will just create a variable over here called maybe username, and I will just pass it a default value of say maybe Angular. Okay. And similarly, I will also create a method over here, say update name. And what I'll do over here is the same concept that we did, right? So I'll just take take this current username value, and to it I'll just update the name to say something else, say maybe ABC. And just to show you that it is getting updated, we will also attach a math.random to it. So what this will do is it will just kind of also attach a random number along with this ABC. Okay. So I hope you understood now. In our service, we have created a common variable called username, and also a method which will update this username whenever we invoke this. Okay. So what we can do is in our child components, right? We have child 1, 2, 3, right? So what I will do is we will use the same so say assume I will just kind of comment this off, and I will create a new button. Click. So similarly, we'll just define the function over here. So here, as you know that if we have to use a service, we have to first create an instance of it. How to create instances? You just give the word private. So private just means that this instance will be private to this class. So you just give that name of maybe state. That type is of state service. You click here, automatically it imports the state service for you. And here what you can do is you can just do this dot state dot update name, and that's it. Okay. Similarly, the same thing you can do it for the other child components as well. So just to save some time, I will take this over here. And also in order for me to see if that works properly, what I'll do is I'll just comment out this my name because it's an input. So rather what I'll do is I'll just take state.username. Okay. And you see that you're getting a red line over here, and that is because we have created private over here. So as I said, it will be private to this class. If you want the state service to be available in HTML, just make it public. So what that will do is whenever you create something instance of the state over here and you want it to be passed over here, you can do it like this. Okay. So that is one way of doing it. So now what we will do is similarly we'll also update child 2 and child 3. Instead of state.username, the better approach would be that you just create a variable over here. So what I'll do is I'll just comment out all this input and output things over here, and what I'll do is I'll just create a variable name over here. Say I'll call it as username, and I will just initially keep it null, like empty. And in the constructor, once I initialize it, I will just set this dot username to the state variable value, whatever it is there, state dot username. Okay. So what we are essentially doing here is we have just created a local username, and to this local username we have assigned the variable name which is coming from state service. Okay. So there's also other ways by which we can update this variable, but I think now it's a bit too early for us to get into it. So we will get into this concept in the next week. So that time it will be more clear to you. So what you do over here is you will just type username, and the same logic we will repeat it, like concept we will repeat it to other HTML as well, so that you are able to see that it is working fine. So we'll just comment out all this, and the same logic we'll use over here as well. We have instantiated the constructor, and here what you will do is you'll do the same thing. You just define a username, and inside the constructor you have just initialized, like assign that state variable name to this username. Okay. And on the HTML you just change this name to username. Okay. Same thing we'll do here as well. First we'll copy an instance of this service into constructor. So just put the state service, and after you have done that, declare a username instantiated. So always also remember one more thing. If I directly define this as like this, right, empty string, so it means that by default your TypeScript will infer that this is of type string. You don't need to do it in this way. Okay, so this is not a recommended approach. So if you know that it's going to be string and you know the value of it as well, so either, like there are two ways to declare any string, right? So either you can do it this way. Okay, so this is one way of doing it, or you can directly assign it some value like this and leave it. So what TypeScript will do it is it will infer that you are giving it the type of, like the value of string. Okay, so here once your constructor invokes, we will now assign the value of username to your state service username. Okay, so that's how we have done. So now essentially what we have done in all the component is we are basically just removed all the input output things that we had. So we just comment out all this, and we will just now create a child one. Okay. So basically what we have done is, yeah, so we just commented out the previous code which was using input output, but rather than that, what we have done now is we have just let me just comment out this button part. So just here. So we have just commented out all the previous code, and now what we are doing is we are just having these three sibling components inside the parent component, and we don't have any input output emitters in this. Inside the child components, what we are doing is we are just clicking and invoking the service variables. Okay, now let's see how it works. So we'll just give ng serve -o, and if you have any previous copy opened, just close it. You now see that for all the for this child 1 and child 2 we have this buttons created, but child 3 it seems that button is not coming. So we'll just add that as well quickly. Just copy this button logic and paste it over here. And similarly, just copy this function and put it over here. So now you see that what is happening is by default in our service, if you go to state service, we have initialized this name to Angular, and that is why you are seeing this word Angular in all the three child component, right? But say assume now, no, from child 2 I want to pass a new name via service to all the components. Now we see that we have created this basic structure, and but if you click on the buttons, nothing happens. And why is that so? Because in our Angular code, we haven't, like bound this update have coming from input to anything on the HTML. Okay, how to fix it? It's very simple. Just come to your state service. Here, like, what you are doing right now is you're just binding this dot username to service, but you also, like, after that just return this dot username value. So what does that will do is it will give the current name back to the user, right? And now what happens is in your child one component, once you get this value, right, just bind it to username. Okay. And similarly for your child 2 and child 3, right, what we can do is just like update name, right, we can have something called as get name, and that will return me the current username in my state service. Okay. So what I can do is, so this update name, and so what we are essentially doing is in all the component, right, in my child 2, child 1 and child 3, I'm basically defining two functions. One is called my update name, which will get the, like, update the latest name to the service. And similarly, I have something called get name, which will fetch the latest service from the state service back to the component. Okay. So what I need to do now is, yeah. So now let's see what happens. I refresh it. I give update name. So this now has updated some value. And when I say, so basically even now it is not working because what we have done is, though we are fetching the name, we are not assigning it to the username right now in the each of the components. So that is why it is not updating. So just give it as this dot username equals to get dot get name. And same thing, just do it for component 3 as well. And in the HTML, what you can do is you can just give it as fetch latest. Same thing on child 2. Refresh it. And first let me have some value on child 1. So this is the value currently holding in my state. When I click fetch name, now this is updated and you see the same name is now coming on child 2 and child 3 as well. So one difference if you notice is in my input and output component, like a decorator, the change was simultaneous if you remember. So when I clicked on this, automatically my child 2 and child 3 got updated, and similarly whenever I clicked on any child, the parent was getting updated. But over here what is happening is I have to manually fetch it and update it. Why is that happening? Because here there is no event binding kind of things happening. Like, we have to click, like, manually bind it to some event over here, and then only the Angular will update over for us. Say for example, if I just update some value in child 1, and now if I just click on child 2, only child 2 will get updated. Only when I click on child 3, the child 3 component value will get updated to whatever is the latest value. Okay. So this is one way how we can pass the data between services. Okay. And where this is helpful is, so say you have like a chunk of components which do not have parent child relationship. They have, like, sibling relationships, or they could also be like in different lazy loaded modules. So in those kind of scenarios, if you have to pass data, the best way is, like, you can use services. Just like the way we created some value variable, you can create a variable, and from that component, whichever you want to read the variable or update the variable, just instantiate the service in that particular component, and you can manipulate or read the variable, write some value to the variable, and do all that thing. And anything you write in that service will again get updated to all the components who are subscribing to that particular state service. Okay. So with that, we have understood now, like, how can we pass the data between components using services. And with that, we have come to the end of this second session. I will catch you guys in the next session. Thank you.